Hi all. Welcome to this mini bite on Azure API management. I think probably the only non-AI related topic for the evening. Still old school. I'll just go ahead and start giving a brief intro into what this is about. We would all have worked with APIs throughout our careers. So what's so different about API management? The agenda for today is going to be to first look at what API management is, what is Azure API management, and then look at the business value and the developer value in it. At the end of this, there is not going to be any demo. At the end of the session, I would want this thought to linger on your mind, which is more about what are the different business value propositions, especially that API management offers, with some examples and stories towards it that would help us remember that better. So getting into API management as a discipline has been there for quite some time now. APIs has been there for a very long time, but this discipline of API management is probably getting or gaining more and more traction in the last 5 to 8 years. So it's in at a high level, it is just a process of being able to let's say take the approach of a design first for an API rather than typically we have been writing APIs and then trying to get the contract out of it, but it's basically a reverse thought process. You first design the API, get the contract, everything published. You have your QA team writing their test cases, unit test cases, anything, and then you going and developing it. Give out a contract, all the different dependent teams begin to work with that contract. And then you also have documentation available along with it, right? And the goal was to do this in a more secure and scalable way, because without those two, we would not be able to monetize the product as such. And without monetization, there is no purpose of the product being in its existence. So that is what API management is about. It's basically publishing, documenting, and designing your APIs. Now the next question becomes, well, companies have been doing it for, like, they have been having APIs, they have been working on APIs, databases, web applications for since time immemorial. What is it that, or why is it that the companies needs to actually even push towards it, right? What advantage do they leverage, or what is the business purpose behind for them to be pushing towards it? It basically addresses two or three major problems strategically. One, it allows them to expose their APIs to their partners, because as we know, as businesses evolve, there is more and more integration ecosystems where you will have to hook up, or you want to provide access for other systems to hook up to you, which was not the case, let's say 15 years ago, right? 15 years ago Microsoft was still closed, but now Microsoft is more open source, right? Just to quote an example. Similarly, all these different companies, or as companies thrive, the only way they understand that the only way to be there in the competition, it is not just by competing with somebody, but also being complementary to somebody else. So they want to create that ecosystem, which means they have to have a way to expose and manage that exposure effectively. And the moment we are talking about exposure, we also have to ensure that we are able to do it securely in terms of all compliance data and everything. And as we churn more and more APIs, the other cost that any of these development teams incur is basically the cost of its development. So a streamlined development gives you 30 percentage better leverage for the cost that you put in for development in terms of its return on that investment. So to address these three major areas is what API management started, or is why the company started adopting API management, building better ecosystem, addressing the security concerns, and also optimizing or increasing their development efficiency. In terms of the features, you can see most or all of these features are pretty much related to these three topics that we spoke about: control, security, scalability, developer experience, analytics and monitoring that would help us drive or get into more data driven decision makings, policy enforcement, which again is basically security. You are able to do it at one place. versioning and lifecycle management, which again is actually a subset of developer experience. Monetization is what, as companies, they would be focusing on. Integration is what we spoke about, building that ecosystem. Compliance and governance and time to market is a byproduct of being able to have a streamlined system. So now, what is Azure API management? This is common with any different set of software as a service vendor, right? You have API management as a principle. So Azure came with their own flavor of it, and they ensured that it is a completely managed service. You have different planes. They provide the basic building blocks of an API management system, which is basically a management plane, a developer plane, and a control plane. So they provide all that in their own hosted environment, and they take care of being able to provide a solution that has your that has the components of being able to publish that securely and analyze. You can unit test. You can do a lot of stuff there. And now, because they are all PaaS systems, it is more scalable in nature, and because the whole or a whole chunk of the component in terms of building a management system is provided by Azure, the developers' work is much reduced because they can now focus on the business logic of the API and being able to ensure that they are always in compliance with the standards, because the standards and everything is laid out in your API management tool. So with this, I would like to touch upon what is the business value that we are looking at, right? At the end of day, this is what that drives, or this is what that decides whether a technology survives or gets killed. It is not about how good or how strong or how powerful the technology is, but it is about how efficient it is in terms of solving business problems or being able to monetize and provide solutions to end customers. So the reason why any business should adopt this is what that you see there. It delivers tangible business value because we are able to drive any digital transformation, and we can increase revenue, operational efficiency, etc. All the features that we see here is what is the business value that is being offered. I would like to touch upon a few with some stories into it. Digital transformation is something that we have been seeing quite often, right? Wherein at a point in time, there were companies existing in or having a combination of more of non-digital manual work and interpretation. There was a lot of data accumulated, because they were not able to extract data from their partners in any other way. With the explosion of APIs, they are able to get data and provide data digitally, and they all want to ensure that they are able to catch that bandwagon of being able to transform themselves in from a, let's call it, semi-digital world to a more and more digital world. The other major advantage is about increased revenue and monetization. I want to talk about the example here. For example, Maersk is a shipping company. These are real examples, meaning this is how those companies have really used this API management principle to be able to leverage these specific benefits. So Maersk is basically a container shipping company, software or things they deal with software and container shipping assets. So they were able to take the supply chain because they already had the ability to track their ships, track their containers, track the dependent parties of those containers. They were able to take that data, and via API management, they started providing that data to various different third-party integrators. That became a revenue stream for them, wherein they said for throughout the supply chain, for example, you post something from, let's say, China to US, right? The ability, all these different tracking numbers provide you the ability to track it all the way through. How does that happen? Because they either they fly or they ship. If they fly or if they ship, For shipping, you would be indirectly using any of these Merck services because that's how the geographic location of where the container is, when it is expected, all that is being shared by Maersk. So they were able to find a revenue opportunity. They just said, okay, we will expose these APIs. You can get to know this location and you can display it to your customers based on that. And we will be charging you this much money for exposing those APIs. That's how Maersk started making money. The other major feature where API management also helps is improved customer experience. The example of that is basically Air France KLM. They had two major things that they did with API management. One is basically smart boarding. What they did is because they were able to expose all these APIs to different hardware vendors. We all know in airport you have kiosks, you have self-scanning kiosks, and then you go to the counter. These are all different interfaces for you to basically get the check-in, right? What if there are hardware vendors who can connect to your APIs and authenticate that ticket detail? That is what smart boarding is. So they exposed APIs via their API management systems to all these different third party or other hardware vendors. Some vendors use facial scanning, facial recognition as well, and they do this and they allow this check-in. Some of them are more of just this barcode scanning and being able to do the check-in. The other major advantage what they also got via that is being able to check en route throughout the entire journey if you are making an international travel. Typical international travel happens with 2 or 3 partner airlines. So when you are boarding into one of the airline, what provides the ability for, let's call it a Lufthansa, to give you a boarding pass of Air France KLM is via API management. So that's how they expose the APIs via which we are able to get the check-ins done. As an end customer, it becomes very beneficial for us in terms of boarding or in terms of check-in. That's the ability that it gives in terms of improving the customer experience. Now, I'll try to rush through some of the next few topics. In terms of accelerated time to market, it was there are companies who have a very focused business and there are companies who have very diverse portfolio. 3M is such a company. They are more into manufacturing, security systems, hardware, and a lot of stuff. You can even, there is also a 3M office here in Valley or somewhere, I believe. So they are more into a very diversified set of applications. And initially, these were all standalone business units. Now they found, as we move forward, we find the lines between a lot of these industries diminishing and more integration being needed between all these businesses. So you are able to mix two items from two different industries and you are able to create one new product and you are able to get that to the market. Now, as long as these were working in silos, they had a lot of compatibility issues for these systems to talk to one another, which limited their ability to create a new product and get it to the market soon. Now, with the introduction of API management as a principle across all these business units, there is standardization. People are now pointing to one single standard. So talking across these business units becomes easier. So when they want to create a product and get it to the market, it becomes all the more quicker and faster. In terms of enhanced partner, you are able to also work on not just on yours, but you are able to expand your ecosystem with your partners. For example, Schneider Electric, they have a lot of energy infrastructure, right? And they are a central energy infrastructure. There are multiple vendors who use their energy infrastructure and they provide end service to the customers. Now, if I want to calculate how much solar energy has been saved for me, earlier, everything had to go back to Schneider and then Schneider had to provide that data because they are the ones who are actually owning the energy infrastructure. Others are all like more resellers. How API management helped them there was that they were able to share the data to these individual vendors. So now the computing kind of happens at the edge of these vendors itself, rather than everything being able to go back to Schneider Electric. So there are two advantages here. One, as an end customer and as a reseller. As a reseller, I have the data with which I will be able to run or make better decisions. And two, the computing now happens just at the edge rather than everything going back to one central place or one central location thereby overloading it. That's the leverage that they got. And what it also enhanced for them is that because of this opportunity, they were able to get more partners into their ecosystem, as everybody felt the advantage of being able to hold the data by themselves and then running through it. Right. So, and then Finastra is an example of operational efficiency. They have a product called Fusion Cloud, which is based on or built on API automation. API management. The core purpose is they provide ability for different banks and fintechs to kind of use their one single interface for all core businesses. For example, multiple of these banks will need treasury rates, will need centralized rates and exchange rates and all those stuff. So they have a centralized API which takes care of compliance, which takes care of daily updation and everything. So you can build a lot of apps just by pointing to this. So as companies or as banks, I can have an improved operational efficiency because I no longer have to work on each one of these by myself. I have a centralized pool, which Finastra has already exposed, and they also create a revenue stream out of it. You can see more and more of these examples in terms of scalability. Skyscanner is an app we would all have used. As more routes come into picture, you need an increased scale. And because you have API management in the middle, it's as simple as going and just including that route into the API layer, and your scalability is automatically handled because it's a managed service. You have data-driven decision making. You are able to have compliance and risk mitigation. Just a classic example is that same Maersk. They have a digital container shipping association. Whatever compliance is being asked by them, it's just put into Maersk on their API management layer, which takes care of all the other vendors connecting to them being DCSA compliant. That's the power there. So the other major business value is cost saving, as we all know, right? Because one, you are able to monetize and you are increasing your developer efficiency, that automatically saves you in terms of cost. And because you are publishing and documenting and exposing your APIs, you are now more limited in terms of your interaction with your partners to be answering their questions. Those are the different areas in which we look at the cost saving. So this is majorly about the business value that is leveraged out of an API management system. I would want to skip the developer value for lack of time, and I'll just want to open it up for any questions.